This looks at one other way to understand the domestic economy losing control or giving up or surrendering control of its money supply in exchange for controlling its exchange rate. So it doesn't lose control, it chooses to control this instead of that. When we had a flexible exchange rate regime, we saw that all kinds of things could happen here. It moved the interest rate around, the expectations of exchange rate jumped around, and E jumped around, and then nothing happened in the foreign market. Likewise, the foreign market, money market, could move money supply, move money demand, interest rates could rise and fall. It'll move this line here, E will move around, but this market won't be affected at all. They're isolated or sterilized or separated from each other. When the exchange rate is fixed, that breaks down. So anything over here, and we're not going to worry about short versus long run, but once you see this, you can put this back into the short, long run context. Anything over here that increases the interest rate, for example, it could have been that, or I could have decreased the money supply. Both of those would have increased the interest rate. Okay? Whatever you want to look at, those would increase the interest rate. When that interest rate rises, we get a shift of this curve. Now, that is not allowed under a fix because it would influence the exchange rate. This cannot change under a fix. So the central bank has to allow the money supply to adjust for the domestic interest rate to come out all the way to here. In order to get the domestic interest rate to rise, the money supply falls. We're not doing time paths, but if we were, you would see money do that. You would see the exchange rate do that. Notice, because the exchange rate is fixed, it looks like this all the time. So as long as the regime is credible, everybody believes they'll continue to keep it fixed, this expectations here basically is zero. So in theory, you could erase it, which tells you that the interest rates have to be equal, which should also be no surprise, since if this is zero, the returns have to be equal across the two countries. We leave them in only because sometimes we want to consider the case when people quit believing that they'll keep it fixed and they start believing out here the exchange rate's going to rise. That can move this curve, which can force the money supply to move around and force interest rates to move around. But again, this is an example of now foreign shocks in the foreign money market. Foreign shocks affect the domestic interest rate and the money supply, and therefore the domestic price level. So those can have a big effect on the domestic economy.